Candidates. This is between doganswer and former Crazy House World Champion JannLee. JannLee obviously being the clear favorite in this match. If we take a quick look at the overall situation here, we see that Blitzbullet has taken a clear lead in the standings, but he has played a lot more matches than second place Opervesen and third place JannLee. And the favorite is Katesk, right now at place number 7, but he has played a lot fewer matches than the other guys. So JannLee got a kind of a bad start, playing only 5-5 against Bugzilla, but then he has got some momentum, beating Burpcow 9-1 and Zixon 7.5, 2.5, whereas doganswer has lost his previous 3 matches quite clearly. So let's see if the players are set and ready to go. JannLee is online, and we are waiting for doganswer. So, quick look again at the overall standings. As you can see, Blitzbullet only has 5 matches remaining. So he lost against Opervesen 4-6, if I recall. Why do we have Blitzbullet? Yeah, he lost 4-6 against Opervesen, and also lost, a bit surprisingly, 4-6 to Zixon. So my guess is that Blitzbullet will not have anything to do with the outcome of this tournament. Well, he won't be taking the first spot that earns a match against the reigning world champion Yasugi 99. But JannLee might be a contender. So let's see if the players are ready. Is doganswer even online? Doganswer doesn't seem to be online quite yet. Doganswer being a solid 2400 player, but JannLee is usually above 2700. So the question is not if JannLee will win, but by how big a margin will he win. So since JannLee isn't, since doganswer isn't online yet, maybe we will play some casual game just while we're waiting. Let's see if someone wants to play a 1-0 game of Crazy House. No one yet. But the match hasn't started, so we might as well wait. Any predictions from the guys in the chat? Not so many here yet, but Hopefully either someone will play me or doganswer will get online and start his match against JannLee. (9-1) seems like a reasonable result. I would probably predict something in the vicinity of 9-1. Hi there, everybody. And my feeling is that JannLee was a bit rusty in the first match against Bugzilla, but he was on fire in the other two matches he has played. And he managed to beat Zixon 7.5, 2.5, which was more than Katask managed to win by. And Zixon also beat Blitz Bullet 6-4. So an impressive win there by JannLee. Holy cow, how did my ratings become so high? I don't consider them really high. I used to play a lot 20-25 years ago. Nowadays I'm only playing for fun. Considering the best players in the world have 400 points more than me in Crazy House rating, I wouldn't consider my rating that high. So does anybody know if doganswer is coming anytime soon? Let me just check for... It is Saturday, September 25th, and it is 2 p.m. So the players have 20 minutes, I think, to show up. Let's play this New Yorker guy. What a pawn. That can prove useful. And now he is under attack here. I really like this bishop. And well, there should be a mate here somewhere. For instance, like this. Let's see if someone else wants to play. Welcome, Magward, if that is you. And welcome everybody else also. So we are waiting for an opponent for JannLee. Doganswer hasn't shown up yet. He has about 10 minutes left to show up. So if someone is on Discord and has any information about whether Doganswer will show up or not, please say so in the chat. Let's see if Gingerbread Man wants to play. Hi there, okay. Okay, do you know if... okay, no info. So... yeah, JannLee has been online for quite a while, and it looks like Doganswer is finally online. So... this will be an exciting match. JannLee seems to be warmed up, and can he win this match with a big margin? Maybe he will be a threat against Katask in this tournament. So the players are getting ready to play. Yeah, really exciting. I really love how this candidate tournament turned out to be so strong. A lot of experienced, super strong players. And Doganswer starts the match with d4. And JannLee plays usually some sort of conservative setup, just developing normally. I take it that JannLee's openings aren't really up to date, so he just relies on his great feeling for the game. So we see a double kingside fianchetto. In this position, you usually see the players move the h-pawn forward one step at some point, just to get the pawns side by side and cover as many squares as possible in front of the king. It's interesting to see where the players are putting their knights. This knight doesn't seem like it has a bright future because it's banging its head against this d5 wall, but maybe at some point you can push the e-pawn. Also, this knight isn't having a bright future either because it's stepping on the hooves of the other knight here. So I'm not sure where it's heading. Is it heading towards e4, or is black even looking to maybe sacrifice here and follow up with knight h5? Anyway, bringing the pieces where the enemy king is usually a very, very good idea. So I expect we will see some sort of trade here on g4. This knight is trapped anyway, so this will trade a piece for 2 pawns and would leave the white king bit naked. I'm already worried for the safety of the white king. And this is a trademark of JannLee. He often gives his queen just to get the initiative, and this queen will be dancing around, allowing black to place his pieces with tempo. It looked like it was possible to simply take on d4 here. Yeah, queen takes d4. Oh well. White quickly decides to give the queen back. And then this must have been good for black. He can place something on f6. Super strong defense here. And also gaining tempo all the time. JannLee will just be bolstering the defense here. Yeah, this is a semi-aggressive move. Covering h6, threatening h3, and he's ready to pick up the bishop on e5. Material-wise, White is not in a terribly bad shape, but he is down, and maybe we will see another queen sacrifice here. Yep. JannLee just keeping his king super safe, and White has two queens now, but nowhere to place them. Well, there are squares to place them, but no good square. Yeah, this will, as soon as black gets to place his pieces and gain some momentum here, it will be all over. Black just has too much board control here. And also doganswer is behind on the clock. You could be placing another knight here, maybe on f4, yeah. Putting maximum pressure here on h3, looking to strip the white king of his defenders. And this is the paradox of the queen. It's a very strong piece, but it's not like in real life war that if you have a tank and someone pulls a gun on you, you don't necessarily have to move away. But this is how it is in chess. Since the queen is so strong, you need to back away when the guy is pointing a gun at you. So White needs to give back some material, and yeah, doganswer just threw in the towel there. 1-0 for JannLee, and that looked really easy. And why not repeat the same kind of opening? JannLee maybe not fianchettoing his kingside bishop, playing a more conservative line here. Aiming to make use of the kingside weaknesses. He needs another pawn here to get the attack going. And black needs to be careful here, because if he places a pawn here, white will just pick it up and place it on g7. Although white needs to be careful here so he doesn't end up getting forked on e4. Maybe white should move forward with the knight, just to Increase the pressure on the... Okay, so he prefers to go back. I thought knight e5 made more sense, actually. Just covering the b2 pawn that was threatened by the bishop. Although e2 is surely a better square than d3 at the moment, because the bishop wasn't doing anything good here. White having some problems defending f4 actually. And you really don't want to allow the black knight to get to f4, because that's a really good square. So JannLee even weakens his kingside position here. Just to defend the f4 pawn. So notice also how the knight on e6 covers g7. So this is a good spot for black to start attacking. Yeah, looks like this is going south for JannLee. Although the black position isn't much of a big deal, maybe. JannLee is a super strong defender. He's trying to arrange his pieces, probably hoping for black to take the rook, because then you can get the bishop over here. I wouldn't have taken that rook. And quickly snapping the rook just to mend the position a bit. White buys some time. Although, well, the rook was threatening to take on h6, and JannLee wants to keep the pawn here. A very unclear position here. And white is not well coordinated. Yeah, so this makes sense. Covering squares around the king and also attacking this h6 pawn. Which JannLee defends ferociously. He's giving up a knight just to get the pawn for g5. Oh, he puts the rook there instead. I wonder if... Yeah, black can just take it here and maybe play knight f3. Threatening mate on g1. And if... white takes here, black is really close to the white king. Black is simply faster here. So this is a nifty defense. If black takes here, white will get on with his attack, placing the pawn on g7. And I suppose black can just take twice. There's nowhere to put the knight. So black will place something here. Cover h5, f5. And material-wise, And positionally, black is doing really, really well here. So maybe black will go home with the king, yeah. Notice how this bishop is potentially threatening a mate on h2 if this knight leaves f4. JannLee is down to his last 20 seconds. And maybe pawn h2 was a possibility. Still, pawn h2. I like pawn h2. If you have a lot of pawns, just put them to work. Because if white takes, you can take f2. This was a bit cowardly. So this opens up the f-file. And at some point, just put the pawn on h2. The only thing that black needs to be worried about now is a queen at g8 and followed by a knight at f7, which is a smothered mate. But at the moment, it's not so easy for white to get that knight he needs. Now the mating threat is gone. So black closes in for the kill and JannLee oversteps the time limit. 1-1. Strong game there by doganswer. Looked didn't look so good in the opening, but he turned the position around. So white goes for maximum piece activity here in the opening. Sometimes if black plays h6, you can just maybe sacrifice on h6, put a pawn on g5 and try to make use of the semi-open or even open h-file. It's not so easy to push the h-pawn. Just because I said so, black allows h5, but black is trying to provoke some weaknesses. I don't think black will be taking that queen. Yeah, he will take the bishop on e4 instead. And now it's not so easy. Why do you put the... I'll try to put my phone a bit further away. Maybe that will solve it. Where do you put the queen? Because if you play queen d2, you can take on e5. And if white takes back, you can swap queens and get an attack. So white is fishing in some really muddy waters here. I wonder if you take the queen now, maybe. So white decides it's safe to pick up the two knights, even though knight at g5 followed by a pawn on f7 looks a little bit scary. So maybe white can take here at some point. This is interesting, just denying the exit square for the black king. Actually, I'm starting to like white here. Black is behind in development and all the white pieces are placed in useful places. White is only a couple of moves away from mating. If you can get a diag here for f7, it will be mate with the rook on g8 afterwards. And taking on e6 won't help much because knight takes and you're threatening d8 and g7. So black covers from behind. And if bishop at f7, black takes, take, and you can once again run with the king. Very tricky position here. So white decides to pick up a queen instead. Now black has a lot of cover for the king. The pawns and the bishops are working together. Typical move, protecting f7, wanting to mate on e2. Maybe you can pick up a pawn at a2 sometimes. Hi there, Opper. Yeah, just being a bit materialistic, provoking a passive pawn placement there and picking up a useful pawn. Also creating a breach in the white defense. At some point you might land a pawn here on a2. So I expect a lot of black pawns here landing. Black has such great control of his half of the board, and now he can check on c2 just to make the white king move. Or he could pick up maybe a pawn here on b3 or g2. So now white cannot castle anymore. This will end with a little time scramble, but black is in great shape here. So good control over his side of the board. He will probably just leave the queen. Okay, he didn't leave it. Maybe he should have, because now you can pick up the knight. Actually, the material is balanced here. JannLee blundered that knight on c2, but he is still in great shape here. Probably we will see a sacrifice on f3. Or just picking up the queen. Gaining some material. Oh, and now it's almost mate here. Moving the knight back so you can place the queen on c2. White covers c2. White wants a knight for f3, and black wants a knight for f3, and white covers f3. Queen d2 might be incoming. The king is running over here, but we will probably see some pawns on the second rank soon, queening. So this is a problem. If you take, you can play queen c1, and then if the bishop goes back, you have something here, and g4 is hanging. And it's mate. Okay. JannLee just grinded doganswer down there. Doganswer playing a rather unusual setup here. A bit provocative. Leaving the center to white. Going for an early dark square strategy, which leaves the light squares a bit open, especially when you have the knight on d7, because then you lose control over e6. This way the knight can sometimes go to e5. This just feels wrong. You leave g7 open for a pawn. You will need to place the bishop somewhere just to cover g7, but this is not a good spot for the bishop, I think, because it's blocking both knights. White seems just better here, I think. Taking f7 might be an option, even at this early stage. So white provoked black to use his pawn in a passive spot and then returns home to base. Looks like a very solid advantage for white here. White has extra space, the semi-open d-file, better development, and the knight won't lead a happy life over here at b6. It does support maybe a d5 break here, but White has d5 under control. Not a good square for the knight. So there are so many natural moves for White here. He can just develop, and eventually Black will just suffocate. Now he can't even castle kingside because the h6 pawn is hanging. White has a ton of useful moves here. So the light squares are weak. And whereas Black has already shown his hand, he has placed his pawn, White has this extra pawn in hand. And Black giving up a pawn just to break free. Does take White a little while to pick up the pawn, but 2 extra pawns, they will come in handy. You can probably just take f4 here. Or do you take... Okay, so Black wants to open the long diagonal, of course. So maybe don't take f4. Yeah, just bolster the defense with your extra pawns. That's the way to do it. Leave those bishops behind that pawn on e5. And play some chess over here at the king side. So the king picks up a pawn and quickly returns to g2. If White gets the chance, he will probably play something like bishop e2 or even pawn at e2. So Black grabs the pawn for h3, but yeah. JannLee gives his queen for the knight, so he can pick up the rook. What is happening here? A ton of trades coming here. If Black takes with the bishop, you can take on h6. You need to take with the queen, I think. Oh. But what happens after... Take h6 here, I think. Oh, it's not so clear. So maybe rook h7. Then you probably take and place the rook on h3, and then you have time to pick up a1. So maybe White can just take a1 here. Can he? Or do you put maybe a pawn here first? Queen h6 actually threatens g6 because the f pawn is pinned here by the bishop. Ouch. White needs to go out of the board here. Is there a blow? Queen takes d2 here. That looked really gutsy. But black is so far ahead in development here. I don't see anything for white. Yeah, just take c2 here. You threaten mate and you pick up a couple of pieces. The white king is just naked and will succumb to the power of the dark forces. Picking up the knight on h6 wraps it up. And we will see 2-2. Good game by doganswer. And mate on g2 or e2. Okay, so 2-2. That was surprising. Let me just check quickly the last game because I thought JannLee was doing so well here. Yeah, +6, +7. I was so surprised that he let him off the hook here. But rook takes a2 was very resourceful. White is better here, but actually already here it looks unclear. So you should take f7 and check on h6. Okay. Yeah, why didn't he take g6 here? Apparently rook d1 was better. But now it's just, it's lost. Yep. So let's go back to the game. And we're seeing a d4, d5 opening, double fianchetto. And now doganswer is copying JannLee's setup. Also going for a quick c4 to get a pawn, maybe to infiltrate here somewhere. But notice that black also gets a pawn, so he can place it on h3. So an interesting position here. d4 is hanging. And it looks like a healthy extra pawn for black here. Because white would need one more pawn for g7. And black might even place the bishop outside the white pawn chain. So, if white at some point places a pawn at g7, black might just do a scorched earth tactic here and play rook e8 and hope that white doesn't get a heavy for h8. So this is a bit risky. You could play bishop g7 here. And then it's mate on h8 with a heavy piece, but looks difficult to pick up the heavy piece. This looks better actually. Because black couldn't trade queens because of queen g7 mate. So knight e2 here looks promising. And this is almost mate here. Another pawn on e2. Yeah. Rook at f1 and queen d1, and the queens will just kill white, sorry. Queen here, and you just take everything. Okay, so 3-2, JannLee. Not sure what happened there. White made some mistake, and JannLee quickly capitalized. doganswer repeating the opening that went so bad for him, even though he won the game. And funny thing here is that black has actually won all 5 games. You don't see that very often. White just developing calmly, expecting that his extra space will do the trick. Black will need to push either the E pawn or the D pawn at some point. Nice to see that quite a few showed up here to watch the game. And notice that JannLee plays this in a restricted way. You don't push the pawns here because that leaves squares for the black pieces. Instead he just keeps on developing. Maybe rook d1 or rook e1. White is controlling four ranks and black only 3. So now finally black thinks he needs to do something in the center. Question is, do you this seems like a good response. Sometimes if you trade a pawn, you can place the pawn on e7 and knight takes, and you can take f6. Actually, it might be a threat to take on e5 and place the pawn on e7. So we see the same type of game here where black needs to place his pawn and show his hand early. Maybe white will just move away from the center and enjoy his extra space, play some chess with an extra pawn in hand. That is actually quite fun. Or you can go for the c7 pawn that is unprotected. This is more or less what happened in the previous game. Black is hoping to get some counter chances here. He was threatening knight at f3, so that's why white didn't take the queen. And so much for the extra pawn. Black actually got it back there. I think it was a mistake to go for the c7 pawn actually. It was just too slow. So white reinstating his strong center here. Yeah, take h3, because then you have knight at f3 if white takes. This looks strong, taking on h3, because the bishop on h4 is hanging. So black just leaves his queen hanging here because he has knight at f3 check. Maybe we will see some maybe bishop here or bishop at g3, because you need to cover the e5 square. Also, this bishop isn't hanging anymore. And this just looks too much. Black cannot afford this. He simply doesn't have enough for the queen. So white can just leave the pawn. And you take here and you fork, you get the knight, and it's over. You can pick up e7 also if you want to. And black is just dead lost, so I expect him to resign pretty soon. The pawn on h2 is just dead. You have pawn at c7 coming. Nothing for black to do here. Even so, no one has yet won a game by resigning, so black plays to the bitter end. And the bitter end comes now. Knight f7 mate. So, finally, white won a game in this match. And the players are repeating the opening again. Doganswer going for the quick knight development and the quick h4. And he did get a very dangerous attack, if you remember. I seem to recall that this is the same line as they played before. Well, let's see if Jan has found his stride. Welcome Zixa also. Zarazao. I've seen the bishop e5 idea, and it's actually not so easy to respond to. Because if black takes, you get a strong knight on e5. This looks like a good response by black. G2 is hanging. And this is the problem with when you run the H pawn up the board like this. Sometimes you just leave weaknesses here, the second rank. So what will black do here? Will he maybe pin the white knight? Oh, he even takes on G2. Black figures that he's really well coordinated and can afford giving a piece for a pawn. Of course, this knight is looking a bit silly. Very interesting position. Looks unclear, and doganswer is struggling to find a plan here for white. I don't like the trade on e4 actually, because you bring the black pawn closer to the white king position, and also there is a potential queen swap here, let's say after bishop takes here, and that queen swap will always favor black in this position. So I don't like the way he traded here on e4. Well, black will probably just protect the e4 pawn somehow. White decides he's so weak on the light squares, he sacrifices his queen, but now you see the problems with a semi-open d-file here. Black has won a lot of material here, so he just hits and runs, and if white had taken, maybe you would play knight at g1, attacking the bishop here. But this is just like resigning. Another pawn, or maybe a knight even. Knight at f3. So you take here, knight at f3, and you should just resign as black. Well, what would I have done as white? Instead of knight takes e4, anything else but knight takes e4, I suppose. I'm not sure, actually. At the moment the bishop on g5 is protected, but at some point you get a queen check here, just picking up the bishop. Maybe. One idea here is to check with the knight here, and if the king moves this way, you can pick up e3. But after knight g2, the king will head towards the queen side. Look at how JannLee uses the first, or maybe you should call it the last rank, to place his pieces. The knight at b1 checked the king and also covered c3. So now he has cleared the last rank and the king is in a world of hurt here. Yeah, just clearing some defenders. You could even just move back with the knight. At some point you have bishop c1. Yeah, moving away, keeping it safe. And JannLee wins convincingly. Let's see what the computer says about knight takes e4. It was in this position. Black is slightly better. Well, it's more or less equal, but yeah, after this, black is probably clearly better. Or maybe not. Well, after this, he is for sure much worse. Okay, well, I didn't like. What do you do instead of knight takes e4? Well, h5 makes sense. So let's go back to the game. And let me just follow JannLee here. Oh, he goes for a long castling maneuver here. And this makes it a lot more double-edged. He must have found some confidence here. Winning 3 straight games, so this is very aggressive. It brings the rook to the d file, so sometimes the e5 pawn push is more dangerous now. Black quickly flinging the h pawn against the queen side where the white king was heading. And white is well prepared now for the e5 pawn push. So the question is, do you trade on e4 or do you, you just avoid the trade for the time being? Hard to find moves for black. Maybe he will just keep on running with the a pawn. And now you have knight at f6. A pseudo sacrifice here on d5 gives white a pawn for f6. And now is the perfect opportunity, because with the king on f8 you cannot protect the g7 bishop from behind. Looking really, really good for white here. So the question is, do you check with the pawn on e7 maybe? Or do you place the pawn here on f6? And I'm not sure what's happening with my screen right now, but really strange. Okay. Yeah, Op is saying pawn f6 seems like Jan style. And indeed he went for the pawn at f6, keeping the position under control. Shaking board. So I'm not the only one who gets a shaking board at times. So this is the perfect opportunity for white to strike, because he has everything covered. And I expect we will see maybe a queen sacrifice here if black had taken on h6. And you'd really want that rook in the corner, and there is no escape, I think, because rook b8, you have pawn a7. Also the knight on d5 is hanging, and you have knight f6. This is ugly. Really, 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 really ugly. And the rook out on a8 is still hanging, and e4 is hanging, and the knight will land on f6, and this is just misery. So maybe you just take, do you take e4 or do you take a8? Taking on e4 is the most materialistic move, and you can just leave the queen hanging here, I think. Maybe you should do take a8, maybe, because if the knight takes here on d2, you can take back with the bishop. And yeah, JannLee just strengthening his position, bringing the bishop home. Everything is safe. a8 is hanging. At some point, if you need to, you can take f7. White sort of messed this up a little bit, I think, but he still looks safe. Yeah. There is the mate. So a bit unnecessarily risky in the end, but JannLee won his fourth consecutive game, bringing this to 6-2. We have 2 more games to go. And now JannLee is trying the bishop at kings for placement. Let's see what good comes out of it. White choosing a more ambitious setup with a pawn on g4 rather than g3, which of course creates more weaknesses, but also some possibilities, harassing the bishop and well, sometimes you can even push the g pawn forward. But so both players placing their bishops on king's fifth. A very symmetrical position, with white having the slightly more ambitious setup on the king side, but also a bit more weaknesses. So, is this a brilliant move, perhaps? Hitting b2 and e5. Notice that d5 is hanging though. So what do you do here? You take on f6 and then take d5. Because once you take d5 and then you can take f6, and pawn g7, pawn h7 is an idea. So now white probably needs to be aggressive here. Otherwise, well, I like the knight takes d5 idea better, I think. But I don't see how he will get enough for the piece if he takes here. This just looks bad for white. Black has won some material. And white's position is full of weaknesses. This is a good move though, mending the king side and hitting the c6 pawn. But so many weaknesses. Black king is safe, heading towards maybe g7 or g8. So this knight should probably move somewhere, even though it does prevent the white king from going in this direction. If the white bishop disappears, let's say, let's start with the idea to go here. There is almost a mate with, yeah, he wants to get rid of this bishop. And now it's almost mate here. Knight g2. Sometimes even queen f1. So this will pick up the bishop. No. Mate on d2. Will pick up the king, which is even better. (7-2) JannLee, and if he does win the last game, 8-2, an 8-2 win is decent enough. So we go straight into the e4, e5 theoretical jungle. Where you need a compass and a great tactical sense, or you will get lost for sure. And by compass, I mean you need to know what you're doing. You need some theoretical knowledge here, opening theory. I'm surprised to see that JannLee doesn't know what to do here. So the knight on f7 being a bit shaky, I foresee d5, d7, d5 will coming in the future. And white puts the d5 idea to an end. So white and black trading threats with each other. And this looks like a huge threat. White trying to induce a passive pawn placement here on e6, and after that he will have almost complete control over the dark squares. So probably black is hoping to trade the queen for 2 pieces and a pawn, but it doesn't seem enough. Although knight takes here, maybe you have queen b4 picking up the bishop on c4. So tricky move here, queen e7. So white won the queen, but black will get 2 pieces for the queen. And this is really interesting. Black has great control over the board. Probably queen h3, yeah. Threatening h4, covering g2. Not sure if you take g4 or if you take h4 here. So white gives back his queen for 2 pieces and prefers to pick up e6 first because they threaten to take f7 probably as well. Slight material lead here for white. Black working on the f3 square. So this is really hard to analyze. Probably taking on g7 twice is not enough. But JannLee goes for it. Let's see if he can finish black or if this will finish JannLee. Black threatening to mate on e2 and JannLee goes all in here. Looks like black has a way to escape here with the king. And this is tricky because if black takes, you have knight here taking e6, picking up that pawn. Closing the exit here using the back rank bishop. And white really has some momentum here. But could you go back with the king? Yeah. A lot of loose pieces here. And looks like black is safe enough. The knight is covering g8, so probably the corner is safe. So, doganswer got the last game, losing 3-7. Flattering result for doganswer, I would say. Just let's have a quick look at the last game. Of course, congratulations to JannLee for winning the match. He's clearly better here. But he should have just taken f3 here. But I have a feeling maybe white missed something here later on. Or didn't he? Yeah, so it looks like... Did you see that? Looks like JannLee saw further than the computer here. This is actually mate in 12. If you start with rook at f8. So this was probably a bad move then, but... I'm not sure. The computer is just crazy here. Yeah. So if you just let the computer think here for a while, a bit longer than the half second that JannLee spent here, the computer will realize that the black king isn't going anywhere. It's mate in 14. But somewhere around here, yeah, he should have taken e6 just to get to the king. So knight f7 was the losing move, allowing the king to return to the king side and find a safe spot in the corner. All right. Thanks for watching, and congratulations once again to JannLee for winning 7-3. See you around. Bye bye.